Greetings, Patrick here, 8 Questions with, and welcome to another week of the show, the big show. Um, yeah, glad you guys are here. Well, nobody's here quite yet, but you know what I'm saying. Um, Glad you guys are here. Our guest tonight is Kevin VanHook. This is a grail guest for me. Yes, I did not expect to get somebody like Kevin VanHook to come onto the show. I thought I still had a little bit of a mountain to climb before I could get someone as talented as Kevin to come on. But lo and behold, he said yes, and I'm so glad because he is quite the talent, and I'm very excited to get in there and ask some questions. Um, Kevin has is he's a very much a multi-threat artist. He is not only is he a comic book writer creator who did Bloodshot, created Bloodshot for Valiant Comics. That has gone on to become that went on to become a movie starring Vin Diesel. There is supposedly another one in the pipeline. Um, right now, they're supposed to be working on the new script for it. We'll see if Kevin knows anything about that. He might not. He might so. But I do know that they are supposed to be making a second one. I have a copy of Bloodshot. I just have not watched it yet. I probably should have did that this week. Uh, but very exciting though to be able to talk to the creator of a comic book a superhero. I'm very excited to talk to him about the whole comic world because he's still doing it. He's still writing. He's still art. He's still in the business. He also is a very well known and very respected visual effects guru. I keep saying guru, but that's really what he is. The movies that he's worked on in his career are just amazing. Some of the movies that he's done as a visual, he's done over 60 movies as a visual effect person. I know, is that a word? Is that even a word? Um, he's done some of the movies that he's worked on are iRobot. Um, he's also worked on Triple Threat. He's worked on uh, a movie called Swim. Hell Hath No Fury. Honest Thief, that we know of, that with Liam Neeson, he worked on that. He worked on Project Power. He worked on Cross, Rise of the Villains. Now, I'm super happy about that because I get to talk to him about that because that's a fun ass series. Um, he also did Avengement with Scott Adkins, which we talked about on the channel here. So he also has done Alpha Wolf with Casper Van Dien. He's also a film director as well. And that's where I first met Kevin. I met Kevin that way through his movie called Slayer that came out and starred Casper Van Dien, Tony Planya, and the lovely Jennifer Odell from The Lost World. And Kevin, I know I'm saying this name right. I know I'm saying it wrong, but I just saying because he says he spells it French, and I have no idea. But I know I just say Grivos. I'm just gonna pronounce it like that. Grivos. I don't know. He'll fix it. Who is also in Slayer, and Kevin is also the creator of the Underworld franchise. So and he's got a magnificent voice. I mean, as soon as you hear him talk, you're going like, "Oh yeah, I know that guy." He's got like a Tony Todd quality voice. As soon as you hear it, you know exactly who you're talking to. Don't make no mistake about that. So he directed that movie. That movie was a hell of a lot of fun. Vampire movie. Really dug it. Yeah. So he, like I said, he can do a little of everything and do it really, really well. Hey, Echo, how are you, sir? Glad you're here. Glad you're here. Our guest Kevin VanHook will be here with us in a few minutes. So yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. He's got, I mean, his career is just it's just chock full of hits and different skill sets. I mean, he brings a lot to the party, and he's very much in demand as well. Um, He's got 4 projects that are coming up. As far as that goes, he's working on. It says here, according to his database page, it has 4 movies coming up. One's called Heavy Vinyl. One's called Angel Baby, which is in post production. One's called Broom Street post production. One is currently being made right now that he's working on called Ibos. And so we'll talk to him about that. And as far as as far as another movie he did that I heard about called Detective Night Rogue, which I think is one of the very last films that Bruce Willis has done before his illness took him. So yeah. So Kevin VanHook will be here with us. Of course, if you're into comic books, like I said, he created Bloodshot for Valiant Comics. He's worked on a lot of comics companies. He's worked for Valiant. He's worked for DC. He's worked for Caliber, IDW, Image, and he's still working today. He's still creating art today. So that's really exciting to see. He's worked on DC. He's worked on Batman. He's worked on Oracle. He's just, Superman. You name it, he's done it, and we'll talk to him about it. All right, so I do have a big announcement today. I do have a big announcement. One good, I feel like we're trying to climb up the ladder here, and I feel like we're doing it very, very well. Thanks to your support. We're hoping for 2023 to land guests like Kevin on the regular, to try to get some more well-named folks in the industry to come on out and hang out with us and hang out with you guys as well in the chat. And one of the people that we're going to be talking to in January is Marshall Teague. Marshall Teague, of course, you might remember him. He played Jimmy in the movie Roadhouse, as well as played 7 different bad guys in Walker, Texas Ranger. In fact, his character, I do believe, was in the first Walker and the last Walker, and he played 7 different bad guys in the series. And he's going to come out and hang out with us on January 11th. So I'm really happy about that too, because Roadhouse, that's just an epic movie. That's an epic movie. I mean, who doesn't know about Roadhouse? It's been played over and over and over. It's never left the air. People are discovering it every year. It's such a badass movie. So much fun. And so Marshall Teague here will be with us. He's also, like I said, he also did Walker, Texas Ranger, among other things. And we'll talk to him about his career. And I will be joined on that stream by Hobbs. Hobbs Horb will be joining us for that show as well. So he'll be co-hosting the show with Marshall on the 11th. So that'll be a lot of fun. I'll let you guys know what's going on with the rest of the week, because we do have a busy week, of the busy next couple of weeks here on the channel. Tomorrow night, we'll have our good friend Wes, aka I Am the Ice Lord. He'll be here with us tomorrow. And looking forward to talking to Wes. And we will be interviewing Wes. We will not be just sitting around chatting. We will be conducting our interview. So if you have questions about the Ice Lord, like where did you get the title? Where did you get the title of Ice Lord anyway? You guys can come out and ask any questions that you want, and he'll answer them. He might not answer like what color socks he's wearing, but he'll answer everything else. So that'll be tomorrow night on the 14th. And then on the 15th, Thursday, we will be talking to Ghostwalk Studios head Victoria Varden. I met Victoria yesterday. She is a lovely lady, and she is a driven, focused lady. And they have big things planned for 2023, and we will be talking to them about that come on Thursday. And then most of those shows will be at 8 o'clock Pacific or Eastern time. So, and then Sunday we have a double header here on the channel. At 6 o'clock we will be discussing come true on the ISC Midnights. So that will be happening at 6 p.m. Here. That's with the IFC Midnights. Of course, you know them as Mike from American Werewolf in New Jersey, Ben from Cadaver Club, uh, David from David's Horror, um, myself, Mary, um, and yeah, I'm going to say this too. I'm just going to put it out there, and if it gets back, it gets back. But we still got two honorary nights still floating with us, and that's night from the Night Watch Zone and Coriander. They are still with us in spirit as ISC Midnights. So hopefully, maybe 2023 we will see the return of those two to us. It's sort of I've always taken them with me for every show that I've done, every ISC show that I've done. And I will continue to do so. And so yeah, so that's going to happen at 6 p.m. And then at 8 p.m. We're still here, and me, an esteemed panel, the Gnat, the Cat, and the Bat are hosting. We're hosting Mike from American Werewolf in New Jersey, and we'll be hosting Monty G, the Horror Miser, as we will be talking about the monster. We'll be watching and talking about the monster. This is an awesome movie, by the way. I really should post it like this, because that's how the cover looks. You can see the creature there, and there's the Zoe Kazan right there. This movie was directed by Brian Bertino, who ended up doing not only and we'll be joined by Sledgehammer Horror. Of course, Ken from Kids Sledgehammer Horror will be here with us, because how could I do a film about Brian Bertino and not invite Ken from Sledgehammer Horror, because he is a huge fan of Brian Bertino. Not only is he, I don't know if he's seen the monster. I do know that he is a huge fan of The Dark and the Wicked, which I think we probably should cover that sometime next year. And so that will be here with us on the 18th on Sunday. And then on the 19th, Monday at 11 o'clock, yours truly is on the road. We are going to Agoraphobes channel to do a watch along with Agoraphobe on oh my God, Black Christmas 74. I have so much to talk about. Black Christmas 74, we'll be talking about that. Yeah, so that's good. We still got some other guests too. We got four big names coming up. But I'm gonna save those for a little bit later. I just know that we're really we're really excited for our guest, and we're working on a good January. And yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm glad you guys are here for the ride. Yep. Those who could share us out, please do so. That'll be awesome. We are on the drive to get to 900. We are at 895, so we are climbing that hill ever so slowly. So we're 895. We're only 5 away from 900, 105 away from 1,000. I'd like to think that we could at least get to 900 by Christmas. And that would be pretty cool. I've heard people say that when you pass 900, it can get really, you're organically are being found more and more. I also wanted to thank everybody who came out and supported the library hall today. That was awesome. I see that the library halls are becoming more and more popular. I enjoy going to the library. I didn't have that much of a haul today, but I will show you the media that I got. I will show you that. I can do that because it's not a very big haul. It's the Christmas season, so every year about this time at the library, things do get a little thin as far as inventory goes. People are so busy shopping and doing everything else that they really don't have much time to go to the library and donate stuff. So for the next couple of weeks, it's going to be really thin. Next week is bag sale a week, but I'll be shocked if I get it if I do that. I mean, I'll probably find something outside the bag, but I don't see myself actually doing a bag sale. Um, but this is what I got for this for this week's library haul, which you could already see on another video, but I thought I'd show it up here. So uh, so I went ahead and I got a digibook of The Hobbit. So and hey Jennifer, how are you? How are your hands? How are your wrists? I hope they're doing well. I hope you're feeling much better. Oh gosh, our guest is here. I'm gonna have to put our hands together and please welcome in the multi-talented, extremely talented Kevin VanHook. Thank you for coming by, Jennifer. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, how you doing?
Oh man, I'm excited. I'm jacked.
Good deal.
This is very exciting for me.
Good. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Um, let's see. Let me take that off. Hold on one second. Oh, I'm trying to get that away. Oh boy. Here, oh, here it is. All right, there you go. So, welcome to the show. Welcome to Eight Questions with. Glad you're here. And wow. Um, do what is there anything that you have not done in the business?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, not that I can think of. In comics, I've done everything in the business. I've lettered, I've colored, I've edited, I've penciled, inked, written. So supervised printing on the press. Uh, so pretty much everything.
Now, that's a really good question because the reason I'm asking that, you brought up the comics because to me, being an old comic book guy myself, um, uh, uh, how hard is it to actually create a character, and what rights do you have as a creator to a said character?
Well, the rights issue just is it's dependent on every deal. So that whatever deal you make with a publisher. So, for instance, Bloodshot, which I co-created, is owned by Valiant Comics. I have participation in it. So, the movie, I'm supposed to see a percentage of whatever they see. Um, the In terms of how hard it is, it's I tend to create relatively easily, but I have to be in a I do have to kind of be in the right mental place to like with that's the goal. Now I'm going to sit down and create new concepts for comics or whatever.
I got a chat going on too. I'm going to go ahead and let them keep up with us as we go on.
Mhm.
We have our friend Jennifer and our friend Andrea. They're both saying hello to you. Thank you guys for all coming in. Yeah, that's a really jumping right in the middle of the soup first question. But I was just sitting there looking at your work in the comics, and I'm going like, that is a burning question for me is how does a creator hold on to his character? I mean, it's both, you like you said, it's for the company, but at the same time, it's your creation,
Yeah,
and it's like, is it one of those things where you mentioned about how they have control, but you go up to them during what I mean is it to plan a comic book, a series. Do you all sit around and discuss it? Like, we're going to come up with a new concept, a new hero, because it isn't just as simple as drawing a character and saying, okay, we're going to throw them into comic books. It takes a lot of planning for that, doesn't it?
it should. In the case of some of the ones I did over the years, we were flying by the seat of our pants. But in terms of like the new stuff I'm currently creating, where I'm writing new books for both for Frank Miller Presents and for Valiant Entertainment. I mean, we're putting a lot of thought and effort and talking about what the goal is and what we're going to do.
Yeah, Frank Miller. I mean, Frank Miller has his own. He's legendary in the business for sure.
Sure.
Is this safe to say I don't know if this is true or not, and this might be a bit extreme, but is this safe to say that he's sort of like our version of Alan Moore in some respects?
Yeah, I don't think that's an unfair statement. Sure.
Um, I like Frank Miller. I know that I know he's controversial to some people, but I know some of the things he said before. But as far as a comic book writer and a creator, he's made some amazing. He's drawn and written some amazing books.
Yeah, his Dark Knight obviously is one of the most influential comic books. Dark Knight Returns is one of the most influential comic books ever made. His work on Daredevil to this day is still, over 40 years ago, is still incredibly influential in the industry and the TV series, all that stuff.
Yeah, I loved Daredevil back there during his run.
Yeah,
I used to collect that book back then when it was during he was running, and I think Klaus Janson was his artist at the time.
Inker. Yeah, Klaus inked him initially, and then Frank went to just doing layouts, and Klaus did finishes, and then Klaus took over. And then obviously a few years later, David Mazzucchelli was doing stuff, and then Frank and David did Batman Year One and stuff like that, which is just gorgeous.
Yeah, I saw the animated movie they did for that Batman Year One. Great story.
Yeah.
Great story. And well, we were talking about that yesterday. We were talking about comic books yesterday, and we're just talking about how just it's a crazy world. I mean, who'd have thought 40 years from now we would have what we have today? I mean, I think if anybody would have told us, hey, guess what's coming down the pike? I think everybody who was watching Superman, You'll Believe a Man Can Fly, Dawn or Superman, they would have been so ecstatic to know what was coming.
Sure.
But now that it's here, it's a little different, for purists, for comic book purists, who they watch what's being offered out, and it's hard sometimes.
Yeah.
Did they change your Bloodshot? Did they change your character? How you wrote him? How you created him? Did they change him a lot for the film?
They changed it a lot because they based the movie on the 2012 reboot of the character, and which is not what I created. So it's a very different character.
Now I don't. Okay, could you maybe explain this a little bit? How does that work? I mean, it's still your creation. I mean, you're not a for hire, a gun for hire. You are a creator. So they sit there and say, listen, we want you to create. I would think that it would go 50-50, like I'm going to create this character, and we're gonna see each other half and half.
No, I was treated like a gun for hire. So
wow, that's not right.
It is what it is.
Wow, is that the normal for comics or for that company? Oh, for the whole industry. Wow, I didn't know that. I did not know.
Yep. No, as I say, I have participation, but I don't have any control.
So does that make you just? I mean, it makes you sort of want to shut. Has that ever made you shut down? Like you just I'm just going to draw with the characters they want me to draw. But when they come up to me and say, so you got anything new that you want to throw out? How do you,
No, you just always try to negotiate the best deal you can. So like this current stuff I'm doing with Valiant, I'm negotiating where I have, more substantial participation and control. Yeah,
because I would think, because your reputation definitely deserves that respect. You You've done so much, and and you don't, you should definitely be treated with the highest respect. We've already seen sort of already what happened when a producer or a producer has tried to pull that shenanigans on a movie. We're talking about Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller. Victor Miller created, Jason and created a lot of elements for it. And then all of a sudden, then he's being told that, yeah, but you were just a gun for hire, when he really wasn't the truth.
Yeah, as I say, it always boils down to what's the deal you make. So, I mean, it's traditional comic book companies, you sign a voucher, and the voucher has a work for hire agreement on it on the back. And that means your work for hire.
Yeah. So I guess I'm going to go back to the beginning. Hi, Hobbs. How are you? Hey, Cal. Hey, Cal. Welcome in. Our guest is Kevin VanHook, who has, wow, we just barely scratched the surface. We're going to circle back a little bit and get back into the comics, because I want to get Kevin's opinion about a few things. First of all, I guess, are you a fan of the Superman movies, Kevin?
I am. Yeah.
The Christopher Reeve Superman?
The original stuff, yeah. I mean, the first two in particular, but yeah.
What about the third and the fourth one?
Less so. Yeah. Fourth one I actually never saw, to be honest with you. Third one,
never saw that. I don't think anybody saw the fourth one. Oh, wait a minute. I think there's one person that has seen it. He's actually in our chat tonight. So there you go. A celebrity in his own right. No. But yeah, let's go back to the beginning. Sorry, Cal. I just had to do that. So where were you born and raised at, Kevin?
Born in Indianapolis, Indiana, and moved around a lot. My dad was an automotive worker who was a farmer at heart. So we would go to Detroit, and he would make some money and then go buy a farm in Kentucky or Indiana. And then farming is tough, and we'd end up back in Detroit and kind of repeat back and forth. And so
you grew up in Detroit then?
Part of the time in Detroit, part of the time in southern Indiana, part of the time in central Kentucky. So what
was Detroit like when you were growing up?
I liked it. I actually liked Detroit. Looking back, I probably would not have let my kids do the things that I did in terms of, 12, 13 years old, taking 2 city buses across a big city like that to go to a comic book store.
Wow.
Myself, but we didn't think anything of it back then. And I went to a high school of the arts for a little bit. We moved so much I didn't get to go very, very long, but I went to a high school of the arts. Had to take a city bus to that anyway. So I was used to doing the bus thing. And right. Loved movies, and they had several old-fashioned movie theaters downtown.
Yeah.
And so I knew downtown pretty well.
Have you been to Detroit lately?
Not the actual city. I did a show in the suburbs in February, and about 8 years ago, I did a show in Dearborn, another suburb.
Okay. Yeah, I'm right outside of it. I'm in a town called Canton.
Okay, I remember where Canton is.
Yeah.
So when I was with Caliber Press, we were in Westland. We tended to say Plymouth, but it was actually Westland.
Yeah, that's next door to me.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's close to you.
Yeah.
And the Gary Reed, who was the publisher, had a series of comic book stores. One of them, they were called Readers, and one of them was the home of our office for the publishing company. We were in the back of one of the Readers.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a little different today in Detroit than it was when you grew up in. That's for sure. A little bit more hairy. Not very many theaters in the city itself.
Yeah.
Everything got pushed out to the suburbs. I'm not even sure if they. Actually, I'm still not even sure if they have actual theaters within the city limits.
Really?
Yeah, I know a lot.
When I was a kid, so I lived on what's called the southwest side, which people tend to want to argue and say there's no south in Detroit. You end up in Canada, but but we were right by Canada, and so we were walking distance of the Ambassador Bridge. So I
Yeah.
was on West Grand Boulevard, between Verner Highway and the Fisher Freeway, and Verner Highway had a couple of movie theaters there, Spanish speaking one, English speaking one, and
Yeah, I
then
was gonna say that where you're at, that's Mexican town.
yep,
Best food in Detroit is the Mexican town.
yeah. Like I say, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time in Detroit, and I would go to the art museum. I'd go to the big library downtown.
Right, right. Um, so where did you get your start at as far as comic books? You must have been it must have been the first thing you took to was drawing and writing comics. How old were you when you first got into that?
17 professionally. So
Um,
yeah. So
now, were you a big collector beforehand? And if so,
yeah,
what books did you collect?
I collected. Excuse me. I collected Fantastic Four. I collected the X-Men, Avengers. Right at that time when George Perez and Marv Wolfman left Marvel and went to DC, I went over with them and started buying New Teen Titans. And but I collected Tomb of Dracula. I bought a lot of books, and big fan of Gene Day on Master of Kung Fu. Big fan of Frank on Daredevil, as we mentioned. So that was the pretty much. I was primarily a Marvel kid.
Yeah, me too. I collected mostly Marvel. I mean, it's sort of weird now. It's like now I'm more apt to lean toward DC,
Yeah,
especially their animated stuff. Their animated stuff is just superb. And more than not, live action. Oh my gosh, it's such a car crash. DC is such a that's it's like watching a clown car at a circus. At a rodeo. How many clowns can you fit in one car? And it feels bad for everybody concerned,
sure.
including the fans. Um, yeah, I was a big fan too of my two favorite artists. I guess I would say for me was George Perez. George Perez always drew the best ladies.
Yeah,
He just yeah. I thought John Byrne wrote the best action, but I mean his work on X-Men is legendary. Um, but
yeah,
yeah, I enjoyed them. I was a Marvel kid too.
yeah. And
Um,
the first artist I ever met in the business was Keith Pollard, and Keith and I have stayed friends to this day. And I met him when I was like 14, but then I reconnected when I was a young man in my early 20s. But Keith has just always been just such a solid storyteller. I really loved his stuff too.
I want to say hi to people that are coming into the chat. Hi Betty. Hi Katie. How are you? Hello. Aloha. Greetings everybody. Um, Yeah, did you have any? Was there any one particular character, or did you practice on other characters before you got hired on? Did you like buy the latest comic book, and did you just practice drawing based on what you read or the book you collected, or did you do all your own originals?
No, I was drawing my Fantastic Four pages and my X-Men pages, and Nova, and stuff like that.
Nova. Oh my gosh, yeah. God, I don't know how many people actually remember Nova. I know that Gunn put him in Guardians of the Galaxy, but that wasn't Nova. I don't know what that was. Um,
No, but I think he's going to be in the movies. The actual, I don't know if it's going to be Richard Rider, but I think a character called Nova, not just part of the Nova Corps, is going to be in it.
that'll be good. Um, what do you feel? I mean, just curious. I mean, what do you feel about today's? Guess since it's so prevalent, what did you think? What do you think about today's movies? I mean, do you look at them? Because you're from the old school. So do you look at them like, okay, this is the best they could do? Do you look at them saying, how do you see today's movies? Could they improve a little bit? Do they not address the source material enough? Um,
By and large, I enjoy them. I typically enjoy all the Marvel movies. I didn't care for Eternals, but I think that they were just dealing with the fact that they introduced all these brand new characters and a brand new concept, a brand new mythos that kind of explains how our world was created, and and then right off the bat we start, killing off characters that we've barely met. So it was hard to really get into that one as much. But things like the I like Doctor Strange movies a lot. I like pretty much all of them. The Wakanda Forever. My only thing was I just felt it was, and it's a tough line to walk. But they were dealing with the fact that a real human being had passed away. That was a major part of the story, and trying to lend some of that to the character, and it just kind of cast this sort of sad pall over the whole film that just didn't ever really let up for me.
Yeah,
But
I could see that. I have not seen it yet, but that's what I've heard from people. They say it's a tough watch because you can sense Chadwick Boseman throughout the whole movie. And yeah, that's I'm okay with the majority of them. I guess the only one I didn't really particularly care for was I didn't really particularly care for the Guardians of the Galaxy. Did not care for that. But otherwise, that so far I it's pretty good.
Mhm.
Captain Marvel has some major plot holes for me that I didn't like that either.
Yeah.
But I do like Brie Larson as Captain Marvel. I thought she was great.
Mhm.
So now you're 17 and this is your first entry into comics. Now I've never heard of anybody. What company did you get hired into at 17?
Pacific Comics.
Pacific Comics. Okay. Now, were they located in California or in the West?
They were in San Diego. I was in Kentucky. So I didn't meet these people in person for years. But yeah, they were largely. I was very fortunate that I had a friend and mentor in the business, a guy named Roger McKenzie. Roger had written Daredevil with Frank Miller, and when Frank first started, he wrote Ghost Rider and Captain America and Creepy Eerie Vampirella and tons of stuff. And I had met him at a comic book convention, and he was kind enough to critique my work, pardon me, and give me advice. And so he wanted to create a new series as a backup for Pacific Comics in one of their titles, and then I drew that. Unfortunately, Pacific Comics folded before the work actually came out.
Oh my, yeah,
that was
hard. It's hard maintaining a comic book company, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. And that was kind of common for me in my early days of my career, getting involved with companies that just didn't last very long, or they changed direction or whatever.
I guess in a sense, though, I guess in a sense, your the work that you did for those companies, though, because they were so limited, I guess those pieces are probably highly sought collector's items.
So the stuff that eventually came out, things like I had a series called Jack Frost that I did in the mid '80s, and that's a bit of a collector's item. And I helped start a company called Innovation back in '89, end of '88, beginning of '89, and so I did some stuff there as well. But it's always one of those things that the goal was to get some comic books out there and get some kind of regular run, and it took a while for me to get that. It probably wasn't until I was with Caliber Press around 1990 that I actually had more than one or two books coming out, in a row. So,
how did you keep your spirits up? I mean, it must have been sort of demoralizing, as an artist you keep putting out some of your work, especially probably at that time, you're getting better and better at it, but yet every company that you're working with is not making it. How did you keep your spirits up during that time?
it was just you just kind of get back up on the horse. That's all. I mean, it wasn't any particular key to it. It was just I knew that I was this is what I loved, what I wanted to do, and I just kind of kept at it. And did one job for Marvel when I was 22, and that was a big deal for me to have a regular Marvel comic book in my hands that I drew. And then that was a Marvel Comics Presents 21. I did a Thing story. And then really, then when I landed at Valiant and had an opportunity to write, suddenly I was writing 3 to 5 comic books a month. So I was, it was one of those things where I felt I had spent the first 7 years or so of my career just in preparation for that.
For the Marvel,
for the Valiant stuff to be,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, I mean, you got your toes wet at Marvel, and then Valiant comes on, and you're ready to rock. Now, is it the same time with your as far as writing goes? How hard is it to actually truly write a comic book? Is it because most people they look at it as bim paf boof, but it's a little bit more than that, isn't it? Especially now.
Yeah.
I mean, even back then, I mean, comic books back then were smart and intelligent. They had good plot lines. Sure, they had the fights and stuff like that, but the writing seemed to be a lot stronger as the years have gone by.
Yeah, it's a craft. It's something you have to work on. So I mean, for me, writing wise, I put the time in to develop the characters and plant seeds and do foreshadowing and kind of try to bring everything together at the end.
Now I know that you're a penciler and an artist. Now, did you do all the art and did you write and do your own art for your books, or did you just write and then turn it over to an artist?
Well, I started off drawing comics, and then when I hit my early 20s, I switched really to primarily writing.
And then let somebody else do the okay. Now that you must have, I mean, that's a vital component. Now, do writers get to pick their artists that they work with, or are the artists assigned to you, and you have to make it work?
Yeah, generally speaking, you don't pick. I mean, it's as time has gone on, and because of what I do and I've done in the business, I have more say on that stuff now, but not traditionally.
Now, so now you're doing this. Now you're with Valiant. You're writing. You're advancing your craft. Then how do the visual effects come into play?
Well, in excuse me, in '94, I signed an exclusive contract to write for Valiant, but no longer be on staff. I had been an editor and then the executive editor of the company. I started off as a production manager, and in '94, I moved my wife and 2 little boys to California, and I had guaranteed income by writing, and I started teaching myself how to make movies. And I wanted to be able to support those movies by doing the visual effects of stuff I enjoyed. So my idea was basically, could I do my own scaled down version of George Lucas's ILM and Skywalker Ranch, and that's what I did. And so I made a short film. It got some attention. I decided to just go ahead and start making my first feature, and then moved on from there.
Now, as far as the visual effects go, you worked on some hell of movies. You've got I was looking at some of the movies you got on your database page. Holy shit! I mean, that's what I mean. You got such a body of work. It's amazing.
Thank you. I was very fortunate. So I worked on iRobot, which was a big one, Miss Congeniality, the Ben Affleck Daredevil. More recent years, I did a lot of television. I did almost all the Law and Order series for several years. Rizzoli and Isles. Did Olympus Has Fallen with Gerard Butler, which was a lot of fun. So yeah, it's I've been fortunate to do a lot of that kind of stuff. And then I did Project Power 4 years ago with Jamie Foxx. Excuse me.
I have a question here. I should ask this. Hobbs is asking, Kevin, are you into horror comics, or did you have a lot of horror comics? Yeah, I guess that would probably be. Were you into EC comics?
Yeah, I was. I had when I was 13, 14 years old and living in Detroit, there was a big fan movement there, and Jerry Bales was there, who was a big early comic book fan, who was somebody who, you know, wrote fanzines and arranged conventions and all that. And he sold comics, older books. So I got some old EC stuff from him. And then once I was a young adult and started making a little money, I bought a few of the Russ Cochran slipcase collections and just read all that stuff. I loved it.
Hello, Kaz. How are you? You're in time. You're here. That's what we love about replay. I'm glad you're here, sir. Our good friend Kaz is in the house. Yeah, it's yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, as far as the special effects go, now you mentioned you did all these projects. Now, what exactly did you do for them? I mean, what does a visual effects professional do? What's your role into it? I mean,
there's different roles, but I'm sometimes a visual effects supervisor, which means I go on set when they're shooting a movie, and I will advise the director and the camera people, how to go about shooting something, so that it's easier for us to add the visual effects later. Because there's certain things you can do that will just make life much easier later, and sometimes that's at odds with the creative vision. And at the end of the day, I always have to say the same thing, which is I'm here to help you execute your vision the best way possible. But this is my advice as far as making it easier in post. And then I also create visual effects. So I do digital matte paintings. So like if we shoot on the Paramount lot and we want to make that look like Boston, which is what I did for Rizzoli and Isles TV series for several years, I would actually digitally do that and make it look like the skyline of Boston is there. Or we had explosions and gun flashes, muzzle flashes, smoke and fire, all those kind of things in post when it's not when it's too dangerous to do it practically.
Let's see. Got Hobbs was mentioning. He says he reviewed and enjoyed a Kevin worked on that is very underrated called Alpha Wolf with Casper. Was that the first movie you did with Casper?
No, that's actually my third movie with Casper.
Okay.
So the first movie I did with Casper was called The Fallen Ones.
Okay.
And then I did a movie called Slayer in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I love Slayer.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's a fun movie. Your commentary was really cool. The commentary was fire. I really enjoyed that. And I'll be asking some questions about that too. Let's see, Alpha Wolf, the Alpha World. Oh, Alpha Wolf, I feel was very well shot. Enjoyed the effects. And he got his copy of that at Family Video. I got my copy of Slayer. I think I picked that up at Disc Replay. I picked up Disc Replay because I'm a Casper fan.
Well, so, thank you both.
Okay, how do you say Kevin's name? Kevin, is it Grevos, or how do you say it?
Grievous.
It is Grievous. Okay, so that's how I said it. Okay, I was saying that. I'm going like, no, that's just way too obvious. That's it. I'm killing his name. So it is Grievous. Yes, yes. Yes.
I got to see Kevin last weekend at LA Comic Con.
Did you tell him you're doing this interview?
I don't know if I mentioned this. I think I only saw him for like 6 minutes. It was mostly, how's your family? How's your family? Everything good? Yeah. He's finished directing his first film, and it's as a director, and it's wrapping up. It's going to be out soon.
Did you get to work on it with him? Did you do the visual effects with it?
Annoyed that I didn't get to. It wasn't his fault. It's just the only reason it was even an issue is the fact that I already am doing a lot of effects for the same company that's handling the post-production on his film. So I just thought it would end up in my hands, but we didn't do it.
Mm. Yeah, as far as the you said that you're saying you're on set, like what are some of the shows that you were actually on set on, and were you on set for iRobot with Alex?
No, iRobot was all done in Australia, and I was brought on in post. But I was on set for um, Project Power with Jamie Foxx and company. I was on set for Hellraiser 6 and 7. Um, a lot of independent films, and a lot of TV. So a lot of Law and Order, a lot of Rizzoli and Isles. I mean,
Uh, what's more harder? What's hard? What's the biggest difference between shooting for TV versus shooting for a film? Is it budget, or is it just pretty much the same thing just on a smaller scale?
it's pretty much the same thing on a smaller scale.
It takes a long time to do the effects. I mean, does it take? Because I know that a series of a TV show, they'll film it like in 7 days for a series. They'll film it for 7. It'll take 7 days to shoot. Um, do you get handed like, okay, here's episode 12. This is our first day. We're gonna shoot our scenes. We're gonna do 3 scenes. Do they hand you the finished product the very first day?
Not until it's edited. So not until there's a complete show. So
Okay.
so in the case of every now and then, there'll be something where, excuse me, everybody is concerned about a particular sequence because it's going to be big, and they'll cut that sequence together, and then I'm handed that, but that's unusual. It's typically they'll finish cutting the whole show.
Okay. And so then how long do you get to have it for?
Usually a couple of weeks.
Oh, that long. Oh, wow. Okay.
Really.
So that, I mean, or am I saying that a little bit because I don't know what I'm saying? I mean, 2 weeks seems to be a long time, but I guess it's not a very long time, is it?
I mean, here's the deal: that 2 weeks is me doing effects, handing it back in, getting notes, revising it, finally. So, many cases there's not a lot of back and forth, but every now and then you'll get somebody that wants to be an expert on fire or something, and they want to argue about how it should look. So, but for the most part, it's a couple of weeks.
Okay. What's been your favorite project you've worked on as far as visual effects goes? I mean, what's the one movie you're proud of?
I'm proud of all of them, to be honest with you. The Olympus Has Fallen was fun. One of my buddies is a guy named Jesse Johnson. Jesse is a action filmmaker, and so you're aware of Jesse.
Oh, yes.
And we just an hour ago, finished the last shot on his latest film. And but I really, really loved his film Avengement. And I did some matte paintings and things. I also did. There's a sequence in it where a guy gets his head blown off with a shotgun, and that's all me. And,
wow.
The guy literally had a green sock from here up on top of his head, and we had to take it from there. But he did a movie called Hell Hath No Fury that I really, really like a lot, that I was very proud of. World War II picture. Came out about a year ago.
Okay. Now that one I did not see. I have seen Avengement, and I did see Triple Threat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I'm a Scott Adkins fan too.
Yeah. Both of them are great, and Avengement, I was just so impressed by how well written it was.
I really wanted that. That's funny you mentioned it, because that's when I reviewed it. That's what I said. I said I just wish that they would have written a little bit more, because it seemed to be just action pieces, and it's like this movie deserved to have just a little bit more backstory to it, because I think it would have made it more interesting, because he had the actors to do that, to do the lifting.
Yeah, he had a great cast.
Craig Fairbase is unknown here, but that guy, he's really good. He's real good. And Triple Threat, I really like that. I thought that was that was different, seeing they flipped the script and made him Scott and then Michael J. White into the bad guys. that was different. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. Now, as far as the effects go, what if, I mean, you do all the like all the gunshots and all the blood? Do you do the blood too for those movies, or is that practical?
We'll if somebody gets shot. And so here's the thing, like Jesse is a traditional practical filmmaker, so he'll try to get as much of it in camera as possible, meaning that there would be a practical squib like that would explode. But if if you're running and gunning and you don't have time, then that's us adding blood and dust hits later. So we'll do that.
Now, has this ever come up where they come up to you knowing that you're a writer as well as a special effects? Have you ever been approached as a writer and asked your opinion about like, what do you think about this? When they hand you a script or say, well, what would you do with differently? Or, is there any, what do you think? What's your opinion about some of the script, some of the how some of the action scenes being written? Has anybody ever come up to you and just said, hey, what's your opinion about it?
To some degree, there's a movie I did called Beyond Paranormal, little flick, and on that one there was a little bit of that, but more often than the writing side, I'll get questions because people will find out that I'm also a director, and so like when I was on Project Power, it became, could you just handle these sequences for us because we're kind of under the gun. And on Project Power, I was brought in the last week before Christmas with a goal of getting us out the film done by Christmas. And so I was shooting sort of second unit, but almost third unit in some cases. So it was fun. It was long days, long hours, but it's so funny. I talked to some of the people on the set from that recently, and I was really only there from Sunday till the middle of Friday night. And people that were there were like, you were there at least 3 weeks, right? And that's like, no. And it's because we just did so much. We shot so much, and I was involved in so much of it.
It's probably because you're a little bit of a wizard too.
Well, I can't take credit for that, but it was one of those things where they had a lot of stuff they could do. They needed done. They were initially bringing me in to just supervise what we call element shooting. So like some gunfire, some smoke, some fire, that kind of thing. But because I knew my way around a set, it was like, hey, would you mind? And then I ended up shooting other stuff too, even with principal actors.
What was the first set that you got to go on?
Hellraiser 6.
Does anybody know what Hellraiser 6 was? Which one it was? I have judgment. I have it right here.
I want to say it's Hellraiser Hellseeker, but I could be wrong.
Okay. Yeah. What was it like for the first time you went on set? I mean, was it new? I mean, were you looking around sort of like holy crow, or did it just seem like you naturally fitted? It wasn't nothing. Nothing no big.
Felt very comfortable. So that was the first time I was ever on somebody else's set, and it was also the first time I had a producer come over and say, hey, would you mind just handling some of this stuff? And so I ended up directing a whole sequence that I was already going to do all the visual effects supervising on it. In the story, the idea was there were these, it's Hellraiser, so there's these sort of nightmarish moments, but there's these two cops, and you see a cop, like behind jail bars talking to you, and then another head kind of grows out from the side, and it's his partner on a fleshy stalk. And so that was my sequence, and I ended up directing the whole thing.
Now, do they come up with these themselves, or do you come up with the effects? You come up with that, like on the off the printed page, like creature comes out, like creature comes out outside the head. Is that already built within the script, or do they depend on you to create something like that for the script?
It varies. In that particular instance, they gave me the script and said, what do you see? And I actually drew sketches and did designs and stuff like that.
Ooh, that's cool. Yeah. See, that's respect right there. They must have known your past. They must have already seen some of your comics, and they knew what they were getting. I mean,
and they knew I'd done design stuff, and like we did a movie called Heart's War, Bruce Willis and
yeah, Colin Farrell.
And on that one, I was just previs. So we were, and it was previs before that was the term. Back then, we just called them animatics. But it was the idea being that they were more than a storyboard, less than a fully animated cartoon, but gave you shot by shot what the idea was. And they had several major sequences. And my friend and mentor, a guy named John Van Vliet, who was the visual effects supervisor on it, wanted to go to Prague with a solid plan of how to do these sequences. And so we worked it all out digitally first, so because one of the advantages you can do in a computer is you can simulate a real world lens and then move things at real world speeds. So we were doing things like, they kept wanting to push the plane lower, like it's a P-51, I think, but it's they wanted it. They kept wanting it lower and lower because it looks more dramatic. And I said, I don't know the rules of these things, but right now you got that thing about 150 feet off the deck, and that seems awfully low to me.
Yeah.
And so then we realized, yeah, that's a little bit too low. So you're not going to get that shot with this lens, but we could make a longer lens. The longer lenses mean it has a higher number, 35 millimeter, 50 millimeter, 60 millimeter, that kind of thing. And the longer the lens, the more it compresses space and brings things to you. So,
now, when that happens, is the plane digitally created, or are you working off the process model?
These were real planes. This was a real plane.
Oh, okay.
That was my point to them. If it's digital, we can do whatever we want. But if you're going to do a real plane, there's danger involved in getting a real plane that close to the ground.
Yeah, no World War II pilot would even a P-51 pilot would not want to fly 150 feet off the deck. You're right. Yeah, well, that would not be.
Yeah, and in this case, there was like a bridge that was maybe 40 or 50 feet, so he would have been even closer to that.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been. He wouldn't. There's no way in hell he would have put his ass there.
Yeah.
No. Let's see. Hobbs is asking another question. He says, "Do you have to use a different lens for darker shots as well?"
Well, lenses have what are called speeds, and so a very fast lens, which has a lower f-stop number or a t-stop number, is better for low light conditions. So, like if you're shooting like a 50 millimeter, the human eye sees something about 50 millimeters approximately, and with no distortion. So the longer you get, the flatter it will become. The wider you get, the more distorted it will be. But if you're using a 50 millimeter lens at an f4, you can't get it super dark. But if you're shooting a 50 millimeter lens at like a 1.2, you can shoot in the dark, and you'll see stuff. You'll see detail.
See. And he also asked you, did you happen to see the newest Hellraiser? If so, did you enjoy it?
I didn't get to see it. Are you referring to the series that just came out?
They shot a remake for I think they came out on Peacock. And I guess it did okay. They changed Pinhead from a male to a female, which makes
I do remember seeing the trailer now, but no, I didn't get to see it.
Okay, so now here you are. You're doing special effects, visual effects. You got over 60 movies underneath your belt. So talk to us about your first movie that you directed, and how did you get encouraged to try to direct? Was that something you said earlier you were teaching yourself how to do movies? When did you get the idea to do your first film? Did someone encourage you, or was it something you always saw yourself doing?
When I was a boy, I kind of allowed myself to have the fantasy and dream of growing up to be a comic book creator. I wanted to make movies, but that just seemed like completely impossible. Kentucky's a long, long way from Hollywood, and it just didn't seem likely. Somehow I could see myself going to New York and working in comics. That was easier for me to believe, but movies just didn't seem possible. So then, when I was in New York and working with Valiant, and I had a lot of success with some of the books, with Bloodshot and other ones, I felt, okay, I can do whatever I want to do. I'm not afraid now, so I want to learn how to make movies. So I took a screenwriting course. I read every book I could get my hands on. Started writing screenplays, trying to understand the craft, the medium, and then when we moved to California, I started working on my first short film with the idea of let's at least put something together. And then I happened to have become friendly with a guy at a production company down in San Diego. They made the TV series Silk Stockings. They made Renegade, Lawrence Lamas, and this was a company called Stu Siegel Productions. And this producer is a guy named Tom Francini. And I took him a VHS tape and I said, "Can you just give me some feedback? I've never shot anything before. I'm just trying to get an understanding of the process, because it's all new to me." And he watched it and he said, "Well, it's better than half the crap we make." And I appreciate that, but any tip you can give me, whatever, I would appreciate it. He said, "No, I'm serious. I think we have a shot at turning this short that you've just made into a little pilot presentation for a TV series." And so we started going down that road, and because they did a lot of stuff with USA Network, and which was a sister company to Sci-Fi Channel. And while that particular project didn't end up becoming anything, I started putting my first film together, my first feature, which was adapting my original Jack Frost comic books that I'd done in the 80s. And I made a movie called Frost, Portrait of a Vampire.
Nice.
And it was supposed to be called A Killing Frost, but the my salespeople really wanted to get the word vampire in there.
Yeah.
And so took me 5 years. Took a long time, but made a film and sold it and did really well. It had Gary Busey in it. The rest were pretty much friends and local actors, and ended up being the 18th highest grossing direct-to-DVD release of 2003. So that gave me something to be able to tell people and show people when I was trying to raise money for my next one.
Was that pre-accident or after accident for Gary?
Oh, it was after. Yeah.
After.
Yeah, I think his accident was actually in the late 80s.
Yeah, it might have been. What was he like? What was he like working with? I mean, did you cast him yourself, or did you leave that up to your casting director?
No, I cast him. This was a very low budget film, and I cast him. I needed a name. I knew I needed a name.
Yeah.
And I one of my good friends was a guy named Fred Kiernert. Fred had produced the Buddy Holly story with Gary Busey.
Right. Okay.
And he knew him, and we got together and made a deal. But the reality was that Gary was just an enormous pain to work with. It was very difficult to work with. It was not a pleasant 3 days. That's all I can really say about it.
Yeah, it's probably half of that's due to the brain injury. I'm sure. I'm sure that I'm sure that.
According to Fred, he wasn't that different back in '79 when they did the Buddy Holly story.
Yeah.
But
which is what led him to have this accident in the first place. He wasn't exactly all, he wasn't taking care of himself back then, and then it just made it all that much worse.
No, I've heard rumors from the time period, not about him, but just about in general, that cocaine being a line item in a budget and stuff like that. So.
That was back there in Studio 54 days. Let's see. Let's catch up with the chat here. Hobbs is sitting there saying he's very serious when he says that more people should see Alpha Wolf. That was really well done, and you directed that. Yep. I'm highly. I'm a huge Slayer fan. That is an amazing film. That's a lot of fun. Man, that's a lot of fun.
Good.
Echo saying that he was a big Marvel fan in the 90s, but Valiant won me over with Bloodshot, Rye, Magnus, Shadowman, Exo Manowar, and Solar. He still's got some of the Deathmate crossover stills.
Mhm.
And Gary says, Bob says, he's no, I'm not walking inside that. I'm not walking inside that room. Hobbs has actually met Gary Busey, and there's a funny story there. So yeah, so that's your first one, and you overcame. I mean, what a great baptism of fire, though, right? I mean, not only did you make your first film, but you had to deal with your talent. I mean, that was, because sometimes not every set's going to be perfect, right? You're always going to have somebody, there's always going to be somebody having a little bit of an issue or problem or issue, any, things that come up. And so you got to deal with that and learn from it.
Absolutely. No, and my friend Fred told me then, he said, Kevin, every film from here on in is going to be smooth sailing and downhill because that's about the worst it gets. And I was afraid he wasn't accurate, but he was. Everybody else has been wonderful. George Kennedy was wonderful to work with. Robert Wagner was wonderful to work with. All these people. Tom Bosley and I got along really well. Jeffrey Lewis and I got along really well. So these are all, and I worked with Marina Baccarin before she blew up the film, but she had already been on Firefly and stuff like that.
Right. That's where I saw her on Firefly. That's the first time I saw her. And you're right. Yeah, she blew up. She's beautiful.
She is.
She's stunning.
Very good actress. I worked with her. I worked with Adam Baldwin. We used to have the running gag that I was collecting the Starship Troopers playset, and so I had Casper and I had Jake Busey in another one of my films, and then and I had Chris Carpenter and Adam Baldwin and stuff. So I had the Joss Whedon movies as well. So
I'm sure Jake was nothing like his dad.
Much better to deal with, and I got along well with Jake. That was fine.
I think he's underrated. I really do. I think
yeah, extremely talented guy.
Whenever I see his name above on a DVD or a Blu-ray, it catches my attention. Which is really how I found Slayer, because they had Casper on there.
Yeah.
And then I looked in the back of it, and then I saw that it had Jennifer Odell on it as well, and Kevin Grievous, and I said, "Yep, that's fine."
And Danny Trejo.
And Danny Trejo, yes, Danny Trejo was in it, and Tony Planya.
Yeah, Tony Planya.
Yeah, I mean, that was a stacked cast.
Yeah, Linda Carter was in it.
Yes, right. She looked beautiful as always.
And Ray Park. So yeah, I had quite a few. It was really great casting, and that's
a power pack movie. I mean, as far as star power goes and genre names, you can't go much wrong than that. I mean, and it's a good story, and it was it had good gore in it. Had it was fun, definitely fun. I mean, as soon as I saw that, I was hooked.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that was one of those things where I had done. I guess it would have been Voodoo Moon was before that. So I did a movie called Voodoo Moon, Chris Carpenter and Eric Mabius. And Gore Zone, or one of the reviews, had said something about VanHook wimps out on the gore and blood. So with Slayer, we purposely decided to amp it up. Mm-hmm. And then we ended up using their quote on the DVD that says buckets of blood.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, it's such a small world. Oh my gosh. So so when you went down to San Diego, down to that company, and you were mentioning, they made Renegade and Silk Stockings. I just reviewed a film on my channel here that had Rob Estes in it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he was in a movie with none other than Eric Mabius.
Oh really?
Yeah. So I'm listening to you talking, like, man, this is a real small world here.
It is. Yeah, I've lost touch with Eric. So, but we were in touch for a little while. But and Charisma, but Kevin Grievous and I are still in touch, and Casper and I are. I mean, we're very close, and he and his family.
So now everybody here in the chat, now you know why I'm busting my ass hard for this interview, right? We want to make sure Kevin has a great time here.
Well,
that's what I hope that you are. I hope that you're enjoying the questions, because I'm enjoying asking them. That's for sure. Now, as far as Slayer goes, now was that always was that made for Sci-Fi Channel, or is that movie made for Sci-Fi Channel, and then you put more guts and gore in it, and then it's released overseas? How did that work out?
So Sci-Fi Channel was the TV component. So I had made a movie called The Fallen Ones, which was my second film. It's my first one with Casper, and Sci-Fi acquired it for domestic television rights in the U.S. But after they did that, they came to us and to me specifically and said, "We want to make a deal with you to make a slate of films." Because the movie did really well for them, and it had good ratings and all that stuff. And so then I was already almost finished with a movie called Voodoo Moon. They decided they didn't want to make that a sci-fi original because it had some religious overtones in the sense of it dealt with demons and possession and that kind of thing, and they were afraid that that was too controversial in the Midwest. And I'm like, yeah, it's not, but okay. And so they still acquired it, but they didn't make it a Saturday night original. They made it a Sunday night premiere.
Oh.
And starting with Slayer, we did a whole series of films that they purchased. So with Slayer, I went in. They asked me to go in with they wanted 50 pitches for movies, and I'm like, I don't have 50 ideas that I think are worth making movies that are well thought out. To
50 of them.
50. And so I spent, and this kind of goes to your question earlier about is it hard to, or how do you go about creating? I spent about a week swimming a lot and walking and thinking, and came up with 34 original ideas between me and a couple of buddies that did them. So I think 24 of them were mine and 10 were from other people. And then we went in and presented, and they'd said before we went in, they said, we don't, when we do these kind of meetings, don't feel bad if we don't greenlight anything. It's really more about us kind of getting to know each other and all that stuff. Well, they greenlit 6 in that meeting, and one of them was Slayer. And but Slayer, it started off as one thing, and then they kind of, in the course of the conversation, pushed it a lot to become what Slayer became. But what was funny was if you just look at the descriptions, Slayer and Frost, my first film, are the same premise, which was not because of me. That was actually their head of production that was pushing it that way, because both films are a soldier ends up having to hunt down his best friend who's become a vampire.
Yeah.
And that's really what both of those films are. So it's so funny because one of the guys in the room is a guy named Ray Canella, who was a development exec. And he had been aware of Frost. And he'd been a big cheerleader of mine, big fan and friend of mine, supporter. And when Tom, his boss, is describing what he wants Slayer to be, and Tom did not know my first film. This is purely coincidental. But he's describing Frost. And Ray turned to me and smiled. He said, "I think Kevin can write that." Yeah, that's so in a way, it was a chance to do that movie again and take a better crack at it.
Now, do you do all your casting on your projects? Do you have control of your casting, or do you pass it over to somebody else?
Well, we always have a casting director or casting agent. So on the bulk of my movies, I had a producing partner named Karen Bailey. She's now head of development for Starz Network. But she and I worked very, very closely together, and we would go and we would read talent, and she always was very respectful of the fact that ultimately I was the guy that was going to have to direct them and make it work. But we were always pretty much on the same page too. But every now and then we would get thrown a curve. So the only time anybody ever really pushed for casting that kind of threw me off was I had written a role for Lee Majors in Slayer. He was supposed to be the Army colonel.
Right, that's right. You make that in commentary.
Yeah. And they decided they wanted to have a 70s female TV icon instead of a male icon. And they really wanted Florence Henderson. And I said, I have a real hard time seeing Florence Henderson as the hard as nails Colonel in the scene.
Right.
I'm not saying she couldn't have pulled it off necessarily. I didn't know her range that well, but in my mind, I would always see Carol Brady.
Yeah.
And I said, and so in the same conversation, I said, if that's your goal, really, is to get an icon. If I get uh, Lindsay Wagner or Linda Carter, if I get the Bionic Woman or Wonder Woman, would you be good with that? And they said yes, and we were able to get Linda Carter.
And how did that happen? Did you now that's a really daring gamble. Did you know her agent at that time, or I mean,
No,
how do you do that?
no, we just that's what a casting agent or casting director does. Is they have that Rolodex, so to speak. If anybody knows what a Rolodex is anymore,
Right.
and they were able to reach out and say, this is a project we have, and this is what we're doing, and we were typically also trying to get at least a limited theatrical on a lot of these. Unfortunately, in the case of, was it Slayer? I believe it was Slayer. That it was either Slayer. No, it was Death Row. My next one, the one I did with Jake. Sci-Fi really stood their ground on our release date, and if they hadn't, we would have actually gotten a small theatrical, at least a small one, through Lionsgate. But with the release date, when you distribute theatrically, you need a much longer lead time to advertise, do all that stuff.
Right. Right. Um. Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's too bad about sci-fi, though. I mean, they were so progressive back then, but it seemed like right about the same time you were mentioning about doing your doing Slayer about 2016 2017, they slowly just started going away. I mean, and that's
Slayer,
a real shame, because I mean it was such a great outlet for, it was almost like an early version of streaming in a sense, because they were posting independent films that nobody else would show.
sure,
um, and because like USA was doing the up all night, but they were not running anything new. They were always running everything old. Whereas Sci-Fi, Saturday night was, man, that was such a great place for young directors to cut their teeth on, with creature features and monsters and stuff like that. And I mean, it was fun as hell watching Saturday night and
yeah,
discovering new things.
I agree, and I was proud to be a part of it. We got to do a lot
Yeah.
of stuff. So
So now you're doing all three. Now you're juggling. You're doing visual effects. Now, do you do visual effects on your own films, or do you hand them out to a visual effects supervisor?
I have a small team that works with me on all these projects, all the visual effects things. So my niece Jamie, who's a coordinator and an artist, and she's doing a lot of work and handling the bulk of one of the movies that we have in house right now. And but I have several people, and my friend Chad Cole I've worked with for 26 years, so a long time. And we did iRobot together, and Daredevil and Miss Congeniality and all that stuff, Hercules and Xena. And but yeah, I do visual effects on my own stuff. Wes Kafer, who wrote Alpha Wolf, also did visual effects on it as well.
Let's see. Hobbs is mentioning, yeah, big fan of Rob Estes. Are you really? I did not know that, Hobbs. Yeah, I'm a Rob Estes fan too. That's it says here. I remember buying Slayer for some decent coin. Loved it. Well worth the coin. Definitely. I agree. I just wanted to sit there and say I love, one of the reasons I love the movie so much is because she did cast Jennifer Odell in it, because I think she's very talented, and she doesn't really get to do very much.
Now she and I were talking a couple of years ago before the pandemic about trying to do a relaunch of The Lost World.
I would love to see somebody do something with that.
Yeah.
That was such a fun series. I watched. That's where I found her. That's where many of us discovered her from. And she was so much. That series was so much fun. And then it was one of the Atlantic Alliance series. Remember, they all went bankrupt. They went bankrupt all at the same time, and affected like 3 or 4 of those syndicated series.
Right.
including Mutant X, I think, as well. And that was a real shame because they left it on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Let's see. I remember. Let's see. But sci-fi would be included in all cable packages. So definitely work. I sold the hell out of Sci-Fi Channel. Yeah, I mean, Sci-Fi Channel back in the day. I mean, anybody who loves horror mourns it because it used to be really special, and it's like I don't even know what they're doing with it now.
Are you familiar with Tubi?
Yes.
TUBI. So
Yeah.
Tubi's starting to actually fund films. So I'm friends with some of the folks over at the Asylum.
Okay. Good.
And they're funding movies that a little bit bigger budget than what Asylum had been doing lately. So that's more like the range of what I was doing for sci-fi.
I think they're trying to. I think Sci-Fi Asylum is actually trying to elevate their game a little bit. I know that they're not releasing as many movies as they used to per month, but I think that's because they're spending the money on. They're rather instead of releasing 5 at once for 100,000, now they're releasing 1 at 100,000, and it's looking a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's the only way you're going to survive now.
Sure.
Let's see. What else did they say? Let's see. Hey, Krabby, how are you? Glad you're here. Yes, I'm a movie-based person. Yeah, I was waiting for that too, Hobbs. Where's Echo at? He's missing the Asylum talk. We have a super fan in the chat who's an Asylum fanatic. He gets all their movies and reviews them.
Cool.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. So now, what's next for you? What's coming up? I mentioned the 4 items that are listed, but I want you to tell me a little bit about them. What you got coming up?
When you say the 4 items, which ones are we talking about?
According to your database page.
Oh, movie-wise.
Let's see. Now, as Bloodshot 2 I heard that they gave the okay for Bloodshot 2. Is it in development hell, or is it in the process? Where's Bloodshot 2? Where does it stand at this moment in time?
Nobody's told me anything, so I just honestly don't. So, but as far as projects, so my team has been doing visual effects on a lot of the action films for the last year. So we did a lot of Bruce's last movies. We did a lot of Michael Rooker, John Malkovich movies, Jesse stuff. And I think we did like 11 films in the last year. And then we're wrapping up that stuff. Comic book wise, I'm helping this new company called Visiate Entertainment, and they created a book called Changelings that comes out in February. Frank Miller Presents, I wrote a book called Genie, DJINNI. It's part of the Ancient Enemies saga.
Okay.
And that's coming out in February as well. And I'm also trying to, looks like we're going to try and revive my Jason and the Necronauts project, which is basically 10 years after the adventures of Jason and the Argonauts. Jason is challenged to a duel to the death by Ares, the god of war. No living man has ever been able to defeat a god, and so he journeys to Hades and recruits a crew of the dead. And
okay.
The premise of that one. So that's a series that we're looking at trying to get going. I wrote a number of pilots over the last couple of years. Those are also starting to make the rounds and see if something can happen with them.
Are you gonna pattern your Ares after Kevin Smith?
Oh, probably. I wasn't thinking that, but yeah, he. If I end up with the guy that I used for a little teaser trailer, he's definitely in that same world. It's a wonderful young actor named Kevin Ryan, but he's in that same broad description. So
I overheard when you mentioned about working on Hercules and Xenia. So I when you mentioned, I'm going, oh gosh, yeah, Kevin. God, it's been such a while since he passed, but he was so influential in that series.
Yeah, a very charismatic guy. I never got to meet him, but he just struck me as somebody that was very likable.
Let me ask you that because like as far as your peers go, so have you ever met anybody either on the comic book side or or on the movie side, have you ever met anybody yet that you've sort of been like a little starstruck on? Like holy shit, I can't believe I got this guy in my movie, or got this girl in my movie, or I can't believe I'm doing or has it all just been business as usual?
I was pretty jazzed to get Ray Park for Slayer. Um, Casper and I were already friends by that point. When I made the Fallen Ones, I was pretty jazzed about that whole cast. So Casper was, I really enjoyed him in Starship Troopers and Sleepy Hollow, and I had Robert Wagner, who I grew up with watching on Heart to Heart and Switch and things like that.
Catch a thief. Oh, I'm dating myself there.
I saw it later, but the others I saw when they came out on TV. So, but
Um,
and Tom Bosley, who I grew up with on Happy Days.
right, right. That's
Oh,
so much.
Jeffrey Lewis. Jeffrey was a friend. Sadly, he passed, but Jeffrey was. I just really liked him a lot personally. But I told him, I said, I've wanted to work with you since I allowed myself to even dream about making movies, because of how much of an impact you had on me in Salem's Lot. And it's a relatively small role, but he's the gravedigger in Salem's Lot, who is just a scary character when he becomes a vampire.
Yes.
And then, and he was in things like, I want to say he was in Tango and Cash, and but
Oh, High Point Drifter.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and Every Which Way But Loose and Any Which Way You Can. He's Clint's brother, I think.
I think one of the last things I saw him do, I think he did a syndicated series called Land's End.
I
That might have
didn't.
been,
Yeah.
uh,
Oh,
I think
yeah.
I think it was like mid 2000.
I really liked working with Bruce McGill on Rizzoli and Isles. Bruce is just somebody I always loved.
He's so good.
Yeah.
He's so good.
Yeah.
If you think about all the cast of that at Animal House,
Yeah.
I dare say that he probably had the best career of anybody that came out of that movie.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, he was in so many great things.
Sure. I mean, Tim Matheson's had a good career as well.
Yes.
But,
Yes.
but yeah, definitely. Um, I fell in love with Bruce's work on an episode of Miami Vice,
Yeah.
where he was supposed to be basically the sort of Sonny Crockett of his era, where he was sort of the rogue cowboy cop who always got his man, but always had this quest to try to find his villain, much like Crockett and Tubbs are going after Calderon. And they just did this really, really great episode with him, where it's a descent. It's a story of his descent into madness, where you realize he's full on crazy, and he just did it really well.
Yeah, we're talking about you're talking about doing the last I think Detective Night, was that the last movie that Bruce has done? And did you get a chance to meet him on that set?
I did not meet him. My understanding is that is the last footage that was shot, and we did the effects on the last shot that he did. Nothing groundbreaking. It was digitally making a relatively plain room look more like a police station. But
Now,
yeah,
had he been diagnosed by that time? By the time you got that footage, had he been diagnosed with his illness?
yeah, we had done 3 or 4 of his films. We did White Elephant a year ago, which was one of Jesse's movies, Jesse Johnson's movies, and I knew there was something going on because I would talk to Jesse, and he never talked out of school, but I got enough of an impression reading between the lines that there were some difficulties. And we digitally had to do things like removing an earpiece, so that where he's being fed lines, not on that film, but on other films.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's funny because I was asking Matt Eskandari, who directed a film called Trauma Center, and I was sitting there talking to him about that, about Bruce, and I asked him a couple of really hard questions, and he answered them. He straight up answered them. But looking back at it, like looking back at some of the film, and I'm like, I think even as far as back as then, you could, because there were certain lines that were being said that didn't make any sense, and it's just like, why would he say that? And knowing Bruce Willis, as people know Bruce Willis, you're going like, he wouldn't have said those lines. You just didn't see him saying those,
Yeah.
But now you look back and you know what, that he was just saying what was being told in his ear.
Right.
That's a real shame. He deserved to go out on he deserved to go out on a shield. Not like that.
I agree. I grew up with his stuff. I was I was around 20 when I first started seeing him, 2021, when he did Shatter Day on Twilight Zone in the mid 80s.
Right.
And then that was the first time I saw him, and then Moonlighting and Die Hard and stuff like that. And from then on, it was just.
First time I saw him, Miami Vice.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
I didn't realize he was in Miami Vice.
Yep. He certainly, he was, he played a bad guy in Miami Vice. Yeah. That's the first time I saw him. You can definitely see the charisma. See, Krubby's mentioning, I see people are asking some questions. Let's see, he's saying that he is he's a screenplay, he's a screenwriter. And he wanted to know your future project, which we just talked about. And yes, Kevin was a comic artist, and you are a comic artist as well. So you could be the next Kevin VanHook.
Yeah, you'll be better.
Or the next Krubby. I mean, everybody's got to be their own individual. Sure. Listen, I really am grateful that you came out here and hung out with us. Thank you so much. I'm totally honored, honestly.
Yeah,
I really am. I am really honored to be able to have you. I just shot this out in the dark, crossing my fingers, going like, I hope he just doesn't, says no, because I didn't expect you to say yes, but I had to ask anyway.
Sure.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained, and so I was very, very pleased to that when you said yes. I was like over here going like, hell yeah, I got one. I was like, I got Kevin. Yeah. And yeah, I still have a little bit of fanboy in me, for sure.
Well, that's great. No, I appreciate you taking the time to reach out and then us being able to make this work.
Yeah, I definitely want to come back and talk to you when things, we have a few more things coming out and hitting the road. We'll come back and revisit and talk again. You're a sensational guest, and for sure. And thank you for sharing your story and your career with us. Let's see. We've got one last question for you. Krubby wants to know. His question to you is, what made you enter the comic book field, and how did you make yourself? How did you show your talent to impress people? That's actually not a bad question, because you just can't send in yourself cold. But you said you met an artist who encouraged you to send it to.
He was a writer. So what I did was I would go to conventions and take my samples. And so I would work up 3 to 5 pages of comic art, and I would stand in line and do a portfolio review and show my stuff to editors. And back then it was a lot easier. And I have to say, what I mean by a lot easier is easier to be able to see people. I found it amazing and sad in the last few years how often you find editors who don't want to talk to freelancers. I don't understand it, but there's an attitude. I don't know how they are now, but a few years ago, I went to try to speak to somebody from Lion's Forge at San Diego Comic-Con, and they said that they don't talk to creators at conventions. And I said, well, I mean, I'm never the guy that throws down my resume, but I've literally sold millions of comic books. I think it's worth us having a conversation. And never did. They never would connect with me. So to me, I just wrote them off as unprofessional, and I don't want to work for them.
Right, exactly. So, well, that sometimes there's a reason why some companies go out of business, and a lot of that is because they think they know more than other people. They think they know, or they think they can reinvent the wheel, and they don't.
Yeah, that one was just odd. But back in the day when I was showing my stuff, it was always. Editors like Brian Augustin or Mike Gold would be set up at a table, and you could stand in line, and there might be 10 or 15 of us at the most. Today you do a portfolio review, there might be 500 people trying to show. So I get the idea that there's more pressure and all that stuff. But people I used to stand in line with were Chaz Turog and Tim Bradstreet and people like that. When we were first breaking in, Rob Liefeld. When we're first showing our stuff. And so yeah, but that's how I would do it. Is I would show my samples, get criticism, theoretically, hopefully show stuff the next year at a convention and see those same people, and I would have improved. And,
hopefully the people don't. Conventions have changed so much since when you and I first started going to them. I mean, now even to get inside there. Hopefully, I haven't been for a while, but I would hope that if you were aspiring comic book artist, that you wouldn't have to pay to stand in line to be, how a lot of talent will sit there and say, well, if you want a selfie or sign, want something signed, you have to pay an arm and a leg for it. Hopefully that doesn't happen for the comic books.
I don't think it has. I mean, not that I'm aware of. But.
Let's see. Let's see. Oh, no problem, Krubby. No, anytime, man. You're good. You're golden here. Anytime you come in and you have a question you want to ask of our guests, it's all good. Definitely. That's what it's all about, to ask questions. So if you have questions to ask of anybody we talk to, by all means. But I will have to let Kevin go because I've kept him past my time. So I want to thank you guys all in the chat for coming out and hanging out with us. We will be back tomorrow night with our good buddy Wes, aka the Ice Lord. He will be here tomorrow at 8 o'clock. And Thursday we are having Victoria Varden will be here from Ghostwalk Films out of Ohio, and she'll be here tomorrow at 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock as well. Thank you, Andre. I really do appreciate it. Share this out. Drop a comment down below, and we'll see you tomorrow night for the Ice Lord. Kevin, stay right where you're at. Everybody else, thank you so much for coming out. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace.